Hello, I'm Bjorn, and welcome back to Writing a Justice League Dark movie. We are doing the second act, and I know I've been gone for a while, guys. I haven't really uploaded anything in basically a month. It's been like 2.5 weeks, and I had planned to put this out like 2-3 weeks ago, and I just got held up. I got busy with real life stuff, and it just didn't happen. I'm sorry, but hey, it's out now. I should have some content coming out sooner rather than later, and I'm sorry for the dead month. That's my bad, honestly. I try to keep content coming, but sometimes, real life stuff just gets in the way. So I'm not going to hold you up any longer. Let's just jump right into the script.
Just a reminder, this is part 2 of a series. If you have not watched part 1, I would highly recommend going back and watching that. Otherwise, you're basically starting this movie 45 minutes into its runtime. Not something that's ideal. So the link will be in the annotation above if you want to go back and watch that. Alright, we're going to open on Dr. Mist, arriving at an ordinary-looking suburban home. He walks up and knocks on the door. After a moment, an older African-American man opens the door. He's maybe 50 or 60. The man says, "Dad, it's been a while." Dr. Mist says, Yes it has. I'm sorry for that." Miss Sun says, "Kelly graduated from college last week. Can you believe that? They grow up so fast." Dr. Mist says, "More than you know." Miss Sun says, "Look, Dad, I'm glad to see you. Did you work out what you needed to? Because the girls and we miss having you around." Dr. Mist says, "Almost. I promise I've got one last thing to do, then everything will go back to how it was." His son says, "I know Mom dying hurt you. Bad. And I can't imagine what it's like to be someone like you. If you ever need to talk, I'm not a little boy anymore. I'm here for you." Miss says, "I know. I just have one more thing I have to do. I promise." Miss Sun says, "Just tell me this, Dad. What is it you're after?" Dr. Mist goes quiet for a second, and then he answers, "Do you really want to know the truth?" His son says, "I do." Miss says, "I'm old, son. Older than this country. Older than any living civilization. I have seen kingdoms rise and fall. I've seen people born, grow old, and die. I've watched everyone I ever loved outlive me. I'm tired. The truth is, I want what I've always wanted, to be mortal again, and I'll do whatever it takes." We're going to cut to the outside of the house. We see Zatanna leaning against a telephone pole. She asks, "Did you do whatever you needed?" Dr. Mist says, "Yes," as he approaches her. Zatanna says, "Good. Xanadu thinks she might have translated the map." Dr. Mist says, "Right." Zatanna snaps and a door appears. They enter it. We see Xanadu standing over Shade, who's laying on a couch. We see Xanadu moves magical purple tendrils across his body. She says, "How long ago did it start?" Shade says, "A week, maybe 2. It's hard to tell for sure." Xanadu says, "I feel it. Your mind is beginning to lose itself. The magic in your vest is faltering. If this continues, your madness will return in force." Shade asks, "Can you fix it?" Xanadu says, "I can try." Even more magic tendrils grow out of her hands. They move back and forth across the madness vest. We see colorful shapes moving back and forth across the vest as well. Xanadu winces. She says, "Your madness vest, its magic is unbelievably complex. It seems to have a will of its own, almost as if it's sentient. It's blocking me out." The tendrils fall away, and she stumbles back. "I'm sorry, Shade. This magic is beyond my ability to repair." Shade asks, "How long do I have till the madness returns?" Xanadu says, "I'm not sure. A few days, maybe even less. Even as I searched its spell workings, I could feel its grip on your mind slipping." Shade says, "I can't go back, Xanadu. Not to the paranoia, or to the terrors that follow it. I won't go back. If I lose myself, please, in my suffering, you are the only one I trust to do it." Xanadu says, "I'm sorry it's come to this, Shade." Shade says, "Perhaps it is what I deserve." Xanadu says, "No, you never deserve this. If the moment comes, I'll do what you ask. Just let me know if Nightshade appears to you in the meantime. I might not be able to permanently fix your problem, but I might be able to give you some small comfort." We see Shade look to the left. We see Nightshade sitting in the corner of his room. Darkness spills off her body. She smiles in a wicked, sinister way. She turns her head into the light, and we can see that it's rotting. Her eyes are white and lifeless. Shade says, "It's been a few hours since I've last seen her. Thank you for your help, Xanadu. I will let you know if anything changes." Xanadu says, "It's the least I can do, Shade. Come, the others will be returning soon." We're going to cut to the planning table. We see Xanadu, Dorothy, Constantine, and Shade gathered around the table. A magical doorway opens, and Zatanna and Dr. Mist step forth. Dr. Mist says, "Xanadu, is it true you translated the map?" She says, "I have." Zatanna asks, "What does it say?" Xanadu says, "The last piece of the map is hidden within the forgotten and lost. The last piece of the map is hidden within the realm of the lost and forgotten. Scatarius." Constantine says, "Never heard of it." Xanadu says, "Few have, such is its nature. It is a realm woven into the fabric of the multiverse, uniquely shared by all of them. It is a place where all things truly lost, erased, or forgotten end up." Dr. Mist says, "I've heard tales of it, myths mostly. It's supposed to be a dangerous place." Xanadu says, "That is an understatement. It is home to endless horrors and unlimited possibilities. It is a place that does not abide by the rules of any one world, and it is certainly not a place you travel to lightly. Yet, that might be the last of our worries." Zatanna frowns. "Why is that?" Xanadu says, "Because accessing Scatarius is difficult to say the least, unless you want to be forgotten or erased from existence." Constantine says, "I'd like to avoid that if possible, on account of being fond of existing." Dorothy says, "But we went there before, with the portal ring." Xanadu says, "Yes, a true portal ring is one of the 3 ways I know to reach the realm of the lost safely." Shade says, "Well, that's great. Let's just use the portal ring and get this over with." Xanadu says, "That's the issue. I don't have it anymore. It was lost to me a few months back." Constantine says, "Here, I've got one." He slips a small copper ring onto the table. Xanadu smiles. "That is not a true portal ring. It is a reproduction of sorts made by modern sorcerers. A true portal ring is a far more ancient object, and would be very difficult to find. It would take me over a year to do so. Maybe 6 months with some luck. Time we do not have." Dr. Mist says, "You said you knew another way." Xanadu says, 2, actually. We could take the runestones of Dakarmoth. I would not recommend that. The runestones take its pound of flesh from anyone who uses them to travel. And that is quite literal. No, the runestones are our last resort." Constantine says, "What about the 3rd way?" Xanadu says, "That might work. The price will be high, but manageable. Alas, I see no other choice. We'll have to see an old friend, to call in an old debt, in Cairo." We're going to cut to Cairo. We see the team approaching a building in Egypt. We can see the pyramids like looming in the background for kind of a cool visual. Xanadu says, "Be careful what you say here." They enter what appears to be a hookah bar. People sit in the corner booths and smoke in the hookah, normal stuff you'd expect to see in a place like this. A man stands at the bar. He's tall and large, almost like a sumo wrestler, but more muscular. He turns with a jovial smile and says, "How can I help you?" When he sees Xanadu, his smile grows. "Xanadu, how good it is to see you. What's it been, 3 millennia?" Xanadu says, 3.5. The man says, Too long, too long. To what do I owe the pleasure of your fine company?" Xanadu says, "I need your help." The Jinn says, "Ah, I am of course at your service for the proper price. What is it that you seek?" Xanadu says, "Safe passage to Scatarius and back." The man furrows his brow. "Well, grave request indeed. The realm of the lost is not a place I usually travel, if ever. Yes, I think I can do it. How do you intend to pay for such a voyage?" Xanadu says, "I wish to trade my favor. You owe me a great deal, Jinn." Jinn says, "That I do. Very well. It must be serious if you're finally trading in your favor. Your last wish is my command." "We shall go to Scatarius. Come, come." He moves back further into the building. We see strange shelves filled with odd objects. The others follow him through the twisting mess of halls and cluttered junk. He leads them upstairs to a room filled head to toe with junk. He begins to dig through it. "I left it here somewhere. Where did I leave it? Ah, here it is." He pulls out a Persian rug. It's wrapped up like a tube. He says, "This way." He heads up another flight of stairs. Dorothy asks, "How's a rug going to help us get to Scatarius?" Jinn says, "Little girl, it's no ordinary rug. It is a magic carpet." They reach the roof. It's empty and flat. Jinn throws out the carpet and then snaps. It grows larger until it fills most of the roof. It ruffles up and forms seats from the carpet. Jin says, "Get on." The Justice League Dark look at each other awkwardly, but do as he says. We hear the song Magic Carpet Ride begin to play. Yeah, a little on the nose, but I thought it was too funny to ignore. The carpet lifts up off the ground and begins to fly into the air. It picks up speed as it flies through Cairo. Soon it's going so fast that the world beyond is a blur. Colorful energy begins to stream off the carpet. In front of them, a dazzling array of colors spiral together. By the time they're through the other side of it, they've entered Scutarius. We see a vast sandy desert. Looks something like the Gobi Desert, like vast dunes, really cool. We're going to cut to Nick Necro's office. We see Nick wake up from his place on the floor in his basement. He stands and looks down at his chest. The carved pentagram glows orange like burning coal. Nick smiles. He makes his way up the stairs of his basement. He comes to and re-enters his study. He finds Mind Warp waiting. Another girl is with him. She has brightly dyed pink hair. She whispers to herself. She says, "He doesn't know, he doesn't know, he doesn't know, he doesn't know," over and over and over again. When she sees Nick, she gets excited. She says, "He doesn't know, does he?" No, Emily, he doesn't know." The girl says, Good, he doesn't know." She grows silent. Mind Warp says, "Thank you. I've been trying to get her to shut up for hours. Been looking for you, boss. Something happened to the tracker." Nick says, "What?" Mind Warp says, "I don't know how to explain. It's like it vanished. It's an arcane tracker. There's no place on Earth I couldn't see it." Nick asks, "Where was the last place you saw it?" Mind Warp says, "They were in Cairo, Egypt, then gone, like that." "Scutarius," Nick says. "They went to Scutarius. To me. We don't have much time." Nick pulls a ring off his finger and we see it's a portal ring. He spins it on the ground and yells, "Scutarius!" The ring spins and opens up a portal. We're going to cut to Scutarius. We see the team wandering the desert. We see a large steampunk-looking submarine half buried in the sand. Shade says, "Where did all these come from?" Suddenly, a large battleship smashes into the sand in front of them. Constantine barely jumps out of the way as the bow slams down into the sand. A huge cloud of sand is sent up into the air. As it settles, we see the words USS Salvation printed on the side of the boat. We see Constantine stand up from the sand. Zatanna says, "I think we figured out where they're coming from." Constantine says, "Ha ha, I don't think I like this place." Xanadu says, "Few people do." She pulls out the map. We now see a large arrow has appeared in the center of it, and it seems to be pointing left. Xanadu says, "The map changed. It's showing us the way." We see a montage of them walking through the desert. Famous missing ships stick out of the sandy dunes. At one point as they walk, we see a couple of bodies fall from the sky and land in the dunes. We see Constantine lean over and investigate them. Two of them have gunshot wounds to the head, and another has no head at all. John shrugs and moves on. In the background, we see a head fall from the sky. After a bit more walking, we see the desert turn to jungle in a way that should be impossible, almost as if on a hard line. They enter the thick jungle, and we see many crashed airships tangled up in the trees. Strange stone and metal objects litter the ground, each with unusual or unnatural designs that seem impossible. We see strange buildings and ruins also hidden within the grasp of the jungle. Many of them aren't in an earthly style or are made from unknown material. Constantine says, "Does the map say how much further?" He slaps a mosquito off the side of his face. Xanadu says, "No, it fails to mention those details. Just an arrow pointing in a direction." Shade looks around nervously. "Does anyone else feel like we're being watched, or have I gone mad?" The group turns and looks at him. Zatanna says, "No, I don't feel it." Dorothy says, "Me neither." We see Constantine studying the jungle behind the shade nervously. He says, "I swear I see something there." Suddenly, something in the trees moves, just for a second. Constantine's eyes go wide. He yells, "Bloody hell! Run!" He starts to run and the others follow him. Zatanna asks, "What is it?" Constantine says, "I don't know, but it's a bloody big bastard." Suddenly, a large creature rips through the jungle behind them. It's like a T-Rex, but much larger. Its skin is striped green and purple, perfect for blending into the dark jungle. It has long, sharp claws that look like a Therizinosaurus, for those who know dinosaurs. We can hear the thumping of its feet in the mud behind them. It's quickly growing closer to them. Constantine throws a fireball from his hand over his shoulder, and it slams into the monster's face. The creature doesn't even react. Zatanna yells, "Shade! Use your vest! Turn it into something scary and frighten it off. Shade says, it doesn't work on animals. The tree cracks from the rumbling and starts to fall towards them. Dorothy holds out a hand and cartoon tentacles come spiraling out of it. They snag the tree trunk and toss it aside. We hear her whisper, Candlemaker, I need you. A melting wax hand reaches out of the mud a few feet away from them. We see a massive wax monster pull itself free from the earth. Candlemaker cries, Dorothy, what did you do? It turns its wax head towards the dinosaur-like monster and charges. The two creatures crash into each other in a flash of claws and teeth. We see the rest of the league running as the two monsters fight in the background. They come to a rope bridge hanging over a large chasm. At the bottom, we see lava flowing deep from the earth. Across the rope bridge, we see a large medieval castle rising from the jungle. We see the map in Xanity's hand begin to glow. She says, that's it. The map piece is in that castle. She begins to move across the bridge. It sways and creaks. Constantine looks behind him and we see the dinosaur forcing Candlemaker onto the back foot. They grow closer to the group. Constantine says, shit. He begins to cross the bridge. We see Shade, Dorothy, and Zatanna follow. Finally, we see Dr. Mist begin to cross. The battle between Candlemaker and the monster is now at the edge of the cliff. We see the fight in the background as the league crosses the bridge. Xanity reaches the other side. Eventually, we see most of the others reach the other side as well. Soon, only Mist is left crossing the bridge. Just as he's about to reach the other side, we see Candlemaker pivot and knock the dinosaur into the trench. As it falls, its long tail slams into the bridge and knocks it free. The bridge collapses and falls down. We see Dr. Mist plummet towards the lava below. He reaches out a hand and snags the wooden bridge. The board he grabs a hold to snaps, but he manages to catch the next board down. As they hit the side of the cliff, Mist braces. He manages to maintain his grip, but his body begins to catch on fire. He's too close to the lava. The bridge is also beginning to be engulfed in flame. We see the dinosaur slam into the lava below. It bursts into flames and melts. While on fire, Mist climbs up the boards like a ladder. They begin to catch fire all around him. We can see the fire burning away his flesh, but it grows back just as quickly. He reaches the top and climbs onto the cliff. We see Xanadu create water from the air and douse the flames. The burns all across Dr. Mist's body all fade away and heal. Constantine says, Jesus Christ, mate. Zatanna says, are you okay? Dr. Mist says, I always am. That's the problem. He stands and begins to walk towards the castle. Constantine leans into Zatanna and whispers in her ear, where in the bloody hell did you find these people, Z? Zatanna says, actually, they found me. Constantine says, being honest, I don't think I would have made it this far alone. Probably a lesson in there somewhere. Shame I won't learn it. He flashes Zatanna a quick smile, then moves up to where the others are. We see them enter the ruins. We see drawings of dragons and horses painted onto the crumbling walls. Xanadu says, I know this place. This is Camelot. Dr. Mist says, you're right. I thought it was familiar, but I thought Camelot was lost. Oh, of course. Xanadu says, indeed. It was banished to Satarius by my sister. The last map piece must have been placed inside. They enter the castle. It's a single massive chamber. At the very end of it sits a large round table. The round table. Floating in its center, we see the last piece of the map. They begin to approach it when a portal opens up behind them. Nick Necro, Element Girl, and Mime Warp exit. Xanadu says, Constantine, Zatanna, get the map. She tosses John the map pieces they have. Xanadu says, hurry, we'll hold them off. John and Zatanna take off. Nick Necro smiles. He says, Xanadu and Dr. Mist, two of the oldest magi who still live. It is an honor, truly. I wish you no harm. We are not enemies. Simply let me have the map, and I will use the Dawn Spear in a way that benefits us all. Xanadu says, no one can use it. I have seen the future. The Dawn Spear must be destroyed. Nick Necro shakes his head and says, a pity. Then I will take the map piece for myself. Emily, Mind Warp, take care of them. He vanishes in a puff of fire and reappears on the other side of the room, just behind John and Zatanna. Element Girl holds her hands out, and a wall of stone separates the two groups. John and Zatanna are trapped with Nick Necro. Both John and Zatanna get ready for a fight. Nick Necro holds out his hands in a peaceful gesture. We don't have to fight. We want the same things. I used to be your teacher, John. I know you too well. You think like I do. Magic should rule the world. The Magi, and those descended from them, should reign supreme. With the Dawn Spear, I can make it happen. Join me. Constantine says, not to poke holes in your little argument, but I'm no magi. Zatanna says, beyond that, no one should rule absolutely. It doesn't end well. Nick Necro says, I disagree. We are the next step in evolution. Magi are the future. The way forward for humanity is through magic. Magic is the solution to all the world's problems. We can end suffering, disease, starvation. We can make the ordinary humans' lives better as they are phased out. They need not die painfully. We'll simply let them fade away. Infertility, I think. The Dawn Spear has that power. Zatanna says, are you listening to yourself? My mother was a human. What you want is evil. It's barbaric. Nick Necro says, barbaric? Have you forgotten the atrocities they committed against us? They burned us at the stake. They hunted us near to extinction. I'm giving them a mercy they do not deserve. Either stand with me or stand against me. He holds out a hand. Neither John nor Zatanna take it. Nick Necro says, disappointing. You can die among humanity then. Zatanna's hands begin to glow with magic. She says, go John, get the map. I'll hold him off. Constantine says, aren't you worried I'll take it? Zatanna says, I trust you. John turns and runs towards the map piece. Nick Necro's eyes burn with blue fire. He begins to weave spells in the air. Magic missiles made from fire are launched towards John, but smash into an invisible barrier in the air. Nick turns to stare down Zatanna. She says, your fight is with me. Nick Necro says, then you will die, Magi. A pointless waste of better blood. We're going to cut to the other team. We see Element Girl slam a fist made of stone into Shade's chest. He tries to block it with his madness, but it shatters through. He's sent flying back into the wall of the castle. Sanity sends a magical blast into Element Girl. It crumbles away pieces of the rock armor she's built around herself. Element Girl retaliates by sending an orb of water that surrounds Xanity's head. Xanity tries to use magic to pull it away but fails. She's drowning. Suddenly, we see cartoon octopus tentacles wrap around Element Girl. We see them growing from Dorothy's back. They slam her onto the ceiling, then back onto the floor, then to the ceiling again before throwing her halfway across the room into a wall. The water surrounding Xanity's face falls to the floor, and Xanity takes a deep breath. Shade gets up from the floor. We see Mind Warp turn translucent. He launches all of his power towards Dr. Mist. We can see his magic is getting into Dr. Mist's brain. Blood begins to leak from his eyes and nose. He falls to the ground and starts spasming. His brain is being destroyed by Mind Warp's powers. Even as it's happening, we can see green mist begin to curl off his body. Dr. Mist is absorbing the magic. We're going to cut to Zatanna. She has an all-out magical battle with Necro. I'll say it's just a big blowout with lots of cool spells. I won't spend too much time to describe them all because honestly I think, again, this would be better left in the hands of like some VFX people, as I always say. Nick Necro's magic seems to be using a blue fire similar to John's. We can see the star on his chest burning with the same blue energy. As the fight continues, it's clear that Zatanna is on the back foot. She's losing. We see John reach the table. The map piece is in its center. He reaches out and grabs it. It floats into the air and then joins with the other pieces of the map in his hand. They form a single piece of paper. Words begin to appear across it. They're the same mysterious language as before. They glow. John turns so that Zatanna can see he has it. He says, Z, I've got it. Nick Necro is holding Zatanna by her arms. He has a long, curved knife held to her throat. Zatanna fights and struggles, but that only makes him push the knife tighter to her neck. The knife isn't the only thing that draws John's attention. A blue ring of fire burns on the ground around the two of them. We're going to cut to the other room. We see Mind Warp stop using magic on Dr. Mist. He says, the way Nikki talked about you, I thought you were some kind of big deal. Ancient Magi, he called you. The oldest that still remain. You died too easy. Dr. Mist opens up bloodshot eyes. The red within them begins to vanish as he heals. He stands. Mind Warp says, how? Dr. Mist says, I have quite the opposite problem. I'm too damn hard to kill. He unleashes all of the magic he's stored up for Mind Warp's attack. Mind Warp is quickly overwhelmed with magic. It's overloading his system. He explodes into a pool of energy, throwing blood across the walls. He dies. We see Element Girl watch as Mind Warp dies. She screams with genuine horror and despair. The whole castle begins to shake. The earth and stone begins to move like water. They surround the Justice League Dark members in individually perfectly crafted stone cages. They seal up. We're going to cut back to Constantine and Zatanna. We see Nick holding a knife to Zatanna. Strange blue fire surrounds them. You know what this is, John? Nick asks. Constantine says, a hell circle. Nick says, yes. So you know what happens if I cut her throat. Not just death, but damnation. He presses the knife tight to Zatanna's throat. Constantine says, don't. Nick says, oh, John, you really are a simple thing. I know just how to break you. Even when you were a boy, you were so afraid of loss. Hand me that map, or I will make her soul burn in hell for all eternity. Or prove me wrong. Take the map and let me kill her. I know you were planning to do it anyway. You may have fooled her, but not me. You always betray those closest to you. John holds tightly to the map. He looks down at it. He's unsure of what to do. Nick Necker says, no, I'm not bluffing, John. Feel free to leave, but I will kill her. He digs the point of his dagger into Zatanna's neck. We see a trickle of blood run down. Constantine says, fine, take the map. Just don't hurt her. Nick says, you're so predictable, John. I always liked that about you. John holds out a hand and the map levitates over. Nick snatches it out of the air. He looks at Zatanna, almost as if he's contemplating killing her anyway. Ultimately, he tosses her away. Nick says, the Dawn Spear is mine. Try and stop me again, and I will tread upon your corpses to reach it. He walks back towards the stone wall, and it vanishes, crumbling before him. He meets up with Element Girl, where she's just defeated the rest of the team. He spins his portal ring on the floor and yells, Brooklyn! He and Element Girl step through the portal. It winks out behind them. Our heroes lost the map. The stone cages holding Dorothy, Xanadu, Dr. Mist, and Shade crumble. Xanadu looks at John and Zatanna. She says, they took it? Zatanna says, yes. Dr. Mist says, then we've lost. Constantine says, not yet. Not necessarily. I have an idea. We need to get back to Earth first. He throws his knocks-off portal ring on the floor and spins it. It opens up a portal back to the magic carpet. Okay, so I'm going to break the magician's code a little bit here. I'm actually recording this on a different day. And unfortunately, between when I recorded the first part and when I'm recording this part, I lost a lot of my voice. So if my voice sounds a little off for like the next half of the video, that is why. I'm sorry, guys. It's my fault. I'm sorry, lesson learned. I should have done it all in one day. We're going to cut to the House of Mysteries. We see the Justice League Dark gathered around the table once more. Xanadu says, you said you knew of a way to get the map. How? Constantine says, I can't get us the map. Not really. But I can get the information it holds. I saw what it said. I don't speak the language, but there are other ways. I know someone who can facilitate a mind walk. She could send someone into my mind. They could find the map in my memory and copy it. Xanadu stops, thinks, and says, that could be perfect. It's brilliant, actually. Constantine says, yeah, there's just a small problem. It's a rare skill, and the one I know, well, she's my ex. Real crazy type. It might take some convincing. Xanadu says, well, you're going to have to do some convincing. We need... She stumbles forward and holds a hand to her head. Zatanna asks, what is it? Xanadu says, it's another vision. We suddenly cut to Xanadu standing in front of the piled corpses again. They're the exact same as last time. Xanadu approaches them, trying to get a better look at the figure bound in light at the pyramid's top. She wants to know who's holding the Dawn Spear. Suddenly, the corpses' eyes begin to open, one by one. They each twist their heads to look at her. They all have rotten white eyes. Zatanna's corpse says, you're too late. Shade's corpse says, it's already done. Dorothy's corpse says, the future is set in stone. Near Xanadu's own feet, her own decapitated head rolls. It turns to look up at her with ghastly white eyes. You can't change it. You never could. Xanadu is plunged into darkness. She falls through an almost endless pitch blackness. Suddenly she lands on carved stone floors. She slowly gets up onto her hands and knees. She's in a familiar room made from stone with windows overlooking complete darkness. Chains hang from the ceiling and sway back and forth. It's the place Dorothy saw in her dream in the last part. An old record player on the table drops its needle and begins to play a song. We hear Dream a Little Dream of Me begin to play again. Something drips onto Xanadu's face. She moves her fingers up and wipes it away. We see blood coating them. Xanadu looks up and the trains begin to lower from the ceiling. They each drip with blood. She takes a step back. Something bad is coming. She can feel it. There's something here. Something alive. We see fear light across her eyes. We're going to cut back to the House of Mystery. Xanadu awakens from her trance and leans against the table for support. She's still in a panic and struggles to calm down. The others all look at her. Dr. Mist asks, "Any changes?" And Xanadu says, "No, none yet. We have to hurry. I fear the future may have grown worse by our own actions." Constantine says, "Zatanna, can you take us here?" He hands her a piece of paper with an address. Zatanna says, "Yes." Constantine says, "Let's just hope Azza can see reason. That was never one of her strong suits." Zatanna draws a door with her finger, and it opens up in front of them. The Justice League Dark all leaves the House of Mysteries again. We see them exit in front of an abandoned mental hospital. A sign, missing a few sporadic letters, says, "Heralder Hospital for the Mentally Insane." We hear the song "Cold, Cold, Cold" by Cage the Elephant play as they approach the hospital. We can see abandoned wheelchairs tipped over in front of the building. The entire facility has been overgrown with vines and weeds. Xanadu says, "This looks abandoned. Are you sure the person who we are looking for is here?" Constantine says, "She's here. She likes places like this." Shade says, "I've stayed in a place like this once. I can't imagine anyone would want to." Constantine says, "Well, Azza's not exactly right in the head. Trust me, this is exactly where she belongs." They enter the building through its rotting door. The inside of the hospital is just as decrepit as the outside. Constantine calls out, "Azza! It's John! We need to talk!" There's nothing but silence. Suddenly a scalpel comes flying through the air, propelled by nothing. The scalpel stops a few inches from John's throat. Constantine calls out, "Azza, come on! Let's be adults about this!" We see Nightmare Nurse step out of the shadows using a hand to control the scalpel. She has a sneer on her face. She says, "You don't get to call me Azza anymore. To you, I'm Nightmare Nurse." Constantine says, "All right, Nightmare Nurse. Care to put away the bloody scalpel?" She flicks a hand away, and the scalpel flips back into her hand. She says, "What do you want, John? I told you never to come back here." Constantine says, "I need your help. I wouldn't have come if it wasn't bloody important." Nightmare Nurse says, "Not interested." Xanadu holds out a hand and says, "The world is at stake. I don't know you, but surely you understand prophecy." Nightmare Nurse nods. Xanadu says, "I am a soothsayer. I have seen the future. The end of all things is coming unless we can get a memory from John's mind. I can show you the prophecy, if you require it." Nightmare Nurse shakes her head. "No need. Your pulse is stable and your pupils have not dilated. You speak the truth." Zatanna asks, "Will you help us?" Nightmare Nurse says, "I will, but my services are not free." Xanadu says, "We can pay." Nightmare Nurse says, "My price is not money. I want someone to kick John Constantine in the balls. Hard." Xanadu doesn't even think twice. "Done." Constantine says, "Hold on. Let's talk about this." Zatanna raises her hand. "I'll do it." Nightmare Nurse says, "No. Him." She points to Dr. Mist, the most muscular and tallest member of the team. Mist says, "Fine." He approaches John. Nightmare Nurse calls out, "Don't go easy on him. I want it to hurt. I'll know if you go easy on him." Constantine says, "Hold on, wait, Dr. Mist kicks John in the balls hard. Constantine crumples to the floor and vomits. Nightmare Nurse laughs with delight and claps her hands. "Wow, that was lovely. Someone pick him up. We're going to need him." Shade and Mist drag John after Nightmare Nurse as she moves through the empty hospital. She gestures to a cleaner-looking room. A large operating table is set in the center of the room. She has them place John on the table. She brings over some sort of device with numerous strange cables attached. At the end of each cable is a needle. Nightmare Nurse says, "For this to work, I'll need 2 volunteers. They will need to go into John's mind and find this memory you seek. It will be very dangerous. You can easily become lost, and becoming lost will kill you." Dr. Mist says, "I can't die. Send me in." Nightmare Nurse says, "That works, but I'll need 1 more." Zatanna says, "I'll do it." Nightmare Nurse says, "Very well." She pulls over 2 chairs and sets them next to John. She says, "Take a seat." She pulls one of the connector needles down and stabs it into John's neck. It draws blood. John cries out, "Oh shit! What the hell?" Nightmare Nurse says, "Oops, I must have missed." She smirks and then slides the needle incorrectly. She says, "My bad." She then very carefully slides needles into Zatanna and Dr. Mist, neither of whom react. Nightmare Nurse says, "Next, I will establish the connection. You will be disoriented at first. You must find the memory you seek as quickly as possible. I do not know how long I will be able to hold the connection. If you are in a memory when I sever it, you will be lost forever. Do you understand? Zatanna nods, and so does Mist. Nightmare Nurse says, if you find the memory, use this. To attach it... If you find the memory, use this. It will attach to your spirit form. It can contain a memory. Just twist the top. She hands them each a metal container with a strange lid. She begins to chant, and red energy forms in her hands. She sends it into the cables, and it runs along them all, binding all three of our heroes together. The camera spins as Zatanna and Dr. Mist are pulled into John Constantine's mind. We see Nightmare Nurse checking the cables. The connection is stable. They have entered his mind. We're going to cut to John's mind. We hear the song Meet Me in the Woods Tonight by Lord Huron play. A mess of twisting halls appears in front of Zatanna and Dr. Mist. Each of them are lined with wooden doors. The whole thing has a look of an English cottage. It's quaint and clean. Zatanna says, this is cleaner than I would have expected John's mind to be. Dr. Mist says, perhaps. We have to find the memory. You take the halls on the right, I'll take the halls on the left. Zatanna nods. They each split off, heading to their respective halls. Zatanna enters the first door she sees. She enters a memory of John Constantine and Etrigan the demon battling ghouls in a graveyard with lots of smoke and fog. Sort of a fun cameo. I wanted to fit Etrigan in here, but I couldn't figure out a way to get him into the script, so I figured a cameo would still be cool. She leaves and heads to the next door. We see Dr. Mist try one. He opens it up, and we see a teenage John enter a British nightclub. It's grungy and punk. He approaches one of the booths where we see a younger Nick Necro sitting. Constantine says, I hear you're magic. The best, they say. Nick Necro says, everyone in this club's magic, boy. But I am the best. What do you want? Constantine says, a teacher. Before we can see the rest of the memory play out, Mist exits it and enters the next one. We see John at the same nightclub sometime later. He's older. He looks over and sees Zatanna sitting in a booth by herself. He smiles and walks over to her. He says, couldn't help but notice that you were all alone. Zatanna says, purposely so. Constantine says, seems a waste. I'm John Constantine. Zatanna holds out a hand and shakes his. Zatanna Zatara. Again, Mist leaves the memory before it can finish playing out. It's not the one he's looking for. We see Zatanna quickly reach the last door of the first hall she tried. She quickly enters. We see John walking in the rain down a quiet, dark street. It's lit occasionally by street lanterns. It's somewhere in London. He stops at a glass window and peers in. We see Zatanna sitting alone at a table. Through the window, we can faintly hear the song Need a Little Love by the Fratellas play. We see other couples dancing on a makeshift dance floor. Zatanna looks around. She's waiting for someone. Waiting for John. Modern Zatanna looks heartbroken as she watches the scene play out. We see John stare for a moment longer, then turn away. His mind made. He's going to leave Zatanna. Zatanna tries to ask him, you were there. Why? John's memory gives no answer. Zatanna turns away and leaves the memory. She heads back and enters the next hall. She enters the first door there. She steps into a pleasant English home. We see a younger John who's maybe 13 sitting in a chair. His mother approaches him with a cotton ball dipped in rubbing alcohol. She dabs the cotton ball across a cut beneath a swollen eye. Constantine says, just don't know what I'm supposed to do, Mum. They're always waiting for me. Constantine's father says, you gotta learn how to fight. You're just gonna keep getting picked on till you do. It's the way of the world, son. The strong take from the weak. Constantine's mother says, honey, are you sure you should be telling the boy that? Constantine's dad says, I won't lie to him. It happened to me when I was a boy. I learned to fight back. Constantine asks, can you show me how to fight? His father grimaces, if I can find the time, boy. Work got me all slagged up. In the meantime, I got an old punching bag up in the attic. Hit that until you're strong. When I can, I'll teach you form. Those boys won't know what hit them. The memory fades away. Zatanna is thrown back through the door as it ends. This hall of doors is growing empty. Only 2 doors remain. A small blue door and a mysterious red door covered in chains. Zatanna knows the map won't be in these, but she feels she's so close to understanding John. She has to continue. We see Nightmare Nurse struggling to maintain the spell. They've been in there too long. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. They might be lost. Zatanna pulls open the next door. Inside, we see a young John pull open the stairs to the attic. Dust falls down. It's been a while since anyone's been up. John holds up a flashlight and heads up. The attic is dusty, dark, and covered in cobwebs. John turns his flashlight and shines it around. Old furniture and stacks of books are everywhere. John moves through the attic for a bit until he sees the old punching bag. It's propped beneath a cabinet. John tries to move it, but when he does, the cabinet slides. It falls to the ground with a crash as John narrowly jumps out of the way. A box, which was stacked on top, falls to the floor, spilling its contents. We can now see that the box has Aunt Dolly's things written across it in black letters. A red book with strange symbols on the front of it slides and lands right next to John. It's the Book of Magic we saw in the opening scene. John picks it up out of curiosity and opens it up. He shines his flashlight through it. We see the pages of magical symbols. John curiously flips through it. Zatanna looks over his shoulder, and we see a frown form on her face. John stops on a page. We can't see what it says, but he says, "It's perfect." Zatanna is pulled from the memory and jerked back to the hall. A single door remains. It's locked with chains. We can see dread building in Zatanna as she approaches the door. Whatever's on the other side of it, it's something John Constantine doesn't want to face. It's something he locked up. She casts a spell, and the chains fall away. The door creeps open on its own, and Zatanna enters. She's in a basement. Old boxes and furniture are piled everywhere. A large furnace is set in the back of the room. Young Constantine has just finished pouring a circle of salt. He sets the red book on the floor and begins to read from it. He speaks an unknown language awkwardly as he reads it from the book. A red light begins to glow in the middle of the salt circle, and a giant red, muscular hand reaches out of the light. It snags the edge of the stone floor. It hoists up a demon with large, twisting horns and scars running across its body. It pulls itself completely out of the light, and the light vanishes. The furnace bursts alight with fire, lighting the scene. The demon takes a moment to test the salt circle, looking for any faults in its pouring, looking for a way to escape. It says, "An excellent trap. You are lucky to have contained me, boy. Otherwise I would have feasted on your intestines and picked my teeth with your bones." John says, "What are you?" The demon smiles. It says, "I am called Nergile, the whore killer, hell spawn of the seventh circle. Who has summoned me?" John says, "I'm not supposed to tell you my name." The demon laughs. "Clever boy, but so young. A different question then. Why have you summoned me?" John says, "The book said you could give me magic, give me power. Is it true?" The demon smiles. "I could, but there is always a price to be paid for magic." John asks, "What price?" Nergile smiles again. He says, "Don't you know? You seem to know a great deal. All magic requires a sacrifice. I need your blood, John Constantine." John is surprised when the demon says his name. We can see it on his face. Nergile smiles. He's gained the upper hand in this interaction. "Will you give it to me, boy?" Zatanna says, "No, don't. It's a trick." She reaches a hand out to grab the boy, but her hand passes right through him. This is only a memory. She can't change it. John asks, "This will make me a powerful magician, like the book said?" Nergile says, "Oh yes, among the greatest. A demon cannot lie to whom has summoned him. It is written in that book." John says, "All right, take my blood. I'll give it to you." Nergile says, "Then our deal is sealed. Break the salt circle. I promise no harm will come to you." John kicks the salt circle so that the seal is broken, and then he cuts a slash across his hand with a kitchen knife he prepared. Nergile stretches his own hand past the salt circle. John lets his blood drip onto the demon's outstretched hand. The demon begins to laugh. "No, boy, no. You misunderstood. That is not the blood to which I speak." Fire erupts from the demon and surrounds John. It catches the walls on fire. John begins to float off the floor. The ceiling bursts into flames above them, then collapses. John and the demon lift into the air, into the floor above them. We can see John's parents come bursting out of their room. Constantine's mother says, "John, what?" When she sees the demon, she screams. Nergile says, "Now, I take your blood." The demon turns and points a finger at John's parents, and they are engulfed in flame. They scream as they burn alive. We see their twisted, burning forms reflected in young John's eyes. We see tears falling from Zatanna's own eyes. The demon cackles when the bodies stop writhing on the floor. It stands. and puts a finger to John's head. He smears a small bit of the boy's own blood there. I always keep my deals. You will be a great magician one day. One of the best who ever lived. Blood for magic. A pleasure doing business. I'll be seeing you again. John doesn't say anything. He only looks at those burnt corpses with horror in his eyes. He's still in shock. A fiery portal opens up beneath the demon, and it steps back into hell. Zatanna is suddenly pulled backwards. We see the house burning around John as she twirls through the air, pulled right out of the door. Chains wrap themselves around it once more, and the memory is sealed away again. Zatanna is left alone in the twisting door-filled halls. She says, "Oh, John." So real fast, I want to talk about a change I made to the source material. As I often do, I did change the source material a bit. John Constantine's origin story can basically be summed up with 4 things. John accidentally kills his parents trying to cast magic. John makes a deal with the demon Nergal to get demon blood so he can become more powerful. John Constantine trains with Nick Necro, and John Constantine meets and falls in love with Zatanna before breaking it off with her, or they have some kind of messy deal, whatever. Always relationship drama with those two. So my problem was I didn't have a realistic way to show all of these things without it being inorganic. So I elected to not show most of them. But we had those 2 things. John makes a deal with the demon Nergal, and John accidentally kills his parents with magic. It was really convenient to just combine those 2 things into one and make the backstory much more streamlined. And I actually think it gets the point across much more effectively. In the future, as we often will with the character of Constantine, anytime he deals with a demon, there's an extra layer of drama because of his past experiences with the demons. And I think John, more than anyone now, understands just how dangerous dealing with a demon is. So I think this origin story change doesn't really take away anything that was previously there, and if anything, only heightens the storytelling that was already there. I think it's a good change, and it's one I'm going to stick to. We're going to cut to Dr. Mist. He opens a door in the Hall of Memories. He finds himself in the castle. He's found the memory they were seeking. He works his way to where John holds up the map. 2 pieces conjoin together and transform. Text in a strange language is revealed. Dr. Mist turns the metal cylinder given to him by Nightmare Nurse. The memories transform into dust, then swirl around him, filling the container. The container begins to glow, then seals itself. Only moments later, the whole room shakes. He's thrown out of the memory, back to the hall. We cut back to John's body, connected to Zatanna and Mist. Both of them wake up with a start. They look around confused. Nightmare Nurse says, "I had to break the connection. Do you know where you are? Have you returned properly?" Both Zatanna and Dr. Mist shake their heads yes. Nightmare Nurse says, "Did you find it?" Mist holds out a hand, and the canister appears in it. Nightmare Nurse says, "Good, good." John starts to stir. He sits up. "I suppose it was too much to hope that would have killed you. I did such a sloppy job, too. Oh well," Nightmare Nurse muses. John Constantine says, "My head feels like it's bloody well split in 2. Nightmare Nurse says, "Well, you've got what you came for. Go. And John, if you ever come back here, I will castrate you. That's not a threat. It's a fact." Constantine gives her a thumbs up as he struggles to stand from the chair. "Don't worry, love. You'll never see me again." He staggers over to Zatanna, who gives him her shoulder to lean on. She opens the door to the House of Mysteries, and John enters it, followed by the others. We see Madame Xanadu set the memory container on the table. She twists its top and dust fills the air. The memory begins to play. We see the map and the writing on it. Xanadu says, "It looks like I'll have more translation to do. It should be quicker this time. I've already found the required texts." Zatanna whispers to Constantine, "Hey, can we talk?" Constantine looks at her and says, "You peeked into my past, didn't you?" Zatanna nods. Constantine says, "Fine, let's talk." We're going to cut to Zatanna's room. Zatanna says, "Why didn't you tell me where you got your magic?" Constantine says, "Not a pleasant topic. It was my fault, Z. I killed them. And for what? Bloody magic? I'd give it up in a second. But I'll change it. I'll make it all better. With the Dawn Spear. That's why I have to have it, Zatanna." Zatanna says, "John, that's crazy. The spear is powerful, sure, but your parents have been dead for years. Who knows what they would even be like if you did bring them back?" John shakes his head. "I owe it to them, Z. You wouldn't understand." Zatanna says, "I would, John. My mother died too. I never told you because it wasn't something I like to talk about. It was me, John. I was trying to cast magic. One of the first times I ever had.
My father had made me promise never to do it without him, but I was young and so foolish. It went wrong. She wasn't like me and my dad. She was human, not a drop of Magi blood. So when my spell backfired, it ripped her apart, John. Right in front of me. Another change to canon, but one that helps elevate the themes of the story. You'll see going forward. Constantine says, Jesus, Z, I didn't know. Zatanna says, you're probably the only person I've ever told. What I'm trying to say is, John, I do understand. Probably more than most. I think we're the same in more ways than I ever knew. But we're also so different. When I saw your memory, I realized you were what I could have become if I didn't have my father. He taught me that you can't let grief break you. It wasn't your fault, John. Just like it wasn't mine. We were children. We can't let it consume us. We have to move on from loss. Constantine asks, how do you do it? Zatanna says, you just accept the inevitable. Without death, life would have no meaning. It's the finality that makes it all so beautiful. Look at Dr. Mist. Eternal life, but still so miserable. You can see it in his eyes. You can't live for the dead. Sometimes we just have to let the things we love go. Otherwise, it'll just eat you up inside. Constantine says, but what if I can't? Zatanna says, you can. I know it. I never saw you before. Not really. But I see you now, John. You finally make sense. Always so terrified of losing someone again. Afraid to get close to anyone. Acting standoffish to keep people at a distance. You can't live life like that. It'll drive you crazy. Constantine says, it wasn't so bad. Zatanna says, John, you used to look me in the eyes and tell me you loved me. I don't know if that was a lie or not. Looking back on it, I could tell it was ripping you apart. Constantine says, no lie. I really did love you. Still do. Promised myself I wouldn't let myself get close to anyone else again, so I wouldn't have to lose anyone again. But with you, well, I made a mistake. The words hang in the air for a second. Zatanna simply plays it off. A good one, I hope. Constantine nods. Probably the best I ever made. He leans in and they kiss. Zatanna breaks it apart suddenly. She says, more seriously than she did before, promise me, John, no matter what, you'll destroy that spear. I know what you want, but you can't have it. The stakes are too high. I have to know I can trust you. Constantine looks away and thinks. Fine. I swear, he says. She gives him an unconvinced look. Constantine says, I mean it, Z. I'll destroy it. Zatanna looks John in the eyes and smiles. She says, I trust you. She says, you know, I saw another memory. The day you left me, the dance hall. You came, but just watched. Why? Constantine says, I wasn't planning to leave you. But when I saw you there, I realized that I was too close, that I couldn't bear to lose you. Zatanna says, well, I think you owe me a dance. She points her finger to a radio sitting in the corner of the room, and it turns itself on. We hear the same song from that night, Need a Little Love by the Fratellos play. John smiles and offers Zatanna a hand. The two of them dance. That's the end of part 2.
Well, that's the second act. Pretty exciting. Lots of fun visuals and good character development, and overall just a wacky good time. I sure hope that the third act is just as wholesome. I sure hope nothing terrible happens. You guys definitely shouldn't be dreading that third act. It's nothing but fun, lighthearted action the whole time. I promise. I'll pinky swear on it. No, in truth, if I could describe the next act, it would just be this quote.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I mean, genuinely, if any of y'all could peg where this is going, I'll give you a nickel. Go ahead, take a wild guess in the comments. If you get it right, I don't know, I'll do something cool. Not only will you embarrass me by predicting what I'm planning, but also I'll give you some sort of prize. I don't know if it'll be a good prize, but it'll be something. So take a crack at it. Guess in the comments. Try to figure out what the heck I've got planned. I seriously enjoy watching y'all guess. It's always kind of amusing if you either get it right or don't. It's always kind of funny to see someone be wildly off base with what you're setting up, or super on base and embarrass you. So either way, let me know in the comments below. I guess you guys are just gonna have to wait for my next video, before you get good content, because boy, the Marvels does not look good, does it? Yikers. But that's the only superhero movie that you're getting for 6 months that isn't from this guy, so, you better be nice to me or I'll stop. I'll disappear for 3 months instead of 1 month. How about that? That's a threat. Alright, I'm going to stop rambling. If you want something else to watch right now, I did do Writing a Thunderbolts movie. You can go catch up on that because I have the sequel coming out very soon. It'll be the next video I drop that isn't like a massacast. And then I've also got writing a Deadlands TV show just finished, so you can binge those episodes all in one go. All right, I will see y'all in the next one. I'm gone out of here.